one of the things I love about cities is that the stories that happen within them. You know, this is what cities are really about. Is you have such diversity that come from different backgrounds, come with different contexts, and they come with different perspectives. And when you engage the city, when you engage the community within the city, you find that there's this meta narrative that's occurring throughout the city that is speaking into the culture of a city. And that's really what culture, that's really what cities are, is a story that's occurring. And these stories that are occurring in the cities, they're a huge part of how cities take shape. You know, it's not just like, sometimes we think that like cities either have like this extreme intentionality of like what they're trying to do, or completely the opposite, that like it's just going to happen. But the stories that are coming forth are absolutely, it's our responsibility to like take part in these stories happening. And I think that like when we begin to like realize that it's not just my story, but that it's our story, that it's bigger than who we are. And I think that our participation in that is to dream and to live out those dreams and bring them into the forefront of like what society needs, and realize those things can be met through us dreaming and bringing those things to reality. But I also think that like sometimes it's a matter of like being able to view your dream and realize that it's bigger than what you can bring to the table on it. Wow. You know, sometimes we come from a place where we think that this is something I want to see happen, but I can't do this or that. And we don't realize that the very answer for those things are like in the people that we see and walk by every day. And, you know, and I think that it's this huge thing of realizing that cities, cultures are just a story that's unfolding. And we've got to be able to give ourselves to the stories of others, hear where they are, hear where they're coming from, and be able to like converse about what are the things that are happening in our city that need that story to be rewritten. You know, because like these social ills, they don't go away just, you know, because we want them to. You know, if the story begins to unfold that drugs or like, you know, things like murders or like violence, if those things start unfolding in the story of our city, like we've got to be able to like hit pause and go, how can I bring who I am to the table of rewriting that part of our story?
And you know, I love the way you're framing this up, because cities, just like people, really do have an identity. And what I'm reminded of is even Washington. Our story here begins with the Whiskey Rebellion. It's sort of what put this city on the map, and it's an interesting narrative that gives us identity. I mean, it's a little bit good, a little bit bad, and a rebellion rose up that George Washington had to squelch, but it was part of the greater unfolding of American history, and so there's a bit of identity. Of course, that was centuries ago now, and today the narrative is a little bit different. And there are some things that have entered into that story that are shaping people's lives. It's not just that poverty or violence or drugs or these things just are occurring independent of everything. They're affecting all of our lives. And I think grasping that is a big part of owning the city and owning the story. And when I think about, you know, as you said, shaping that story, what better influence than to have the Lord speaking into that story? I mean, he's good, he's powerful, he's wise. When we think about the difficulty of answering some of these intractable problems that a city faces, it's not like our government's not trying to figure out how to solve poverty, you know, or something as inane as like street parking. You know, we have a parking problem here. It's not like people are not like looking to try to fix that. They are, but these are deep and difficult problems that are interlaced with all sorts of different networks and all sorts of different influences. And to find the way out, we need the Lord to speak into that story. And he's just not going to outside of believers that are invested in that story themselves.
I think one of the beautiful things about seeing, some of those things like poverty and some of those things like drug abuse or even violence,
Right.
for them to go from whatever measure of those things that are happening from that point to zero, sometimes that takes like years, even decades for that to happen.
It's really true.
It's like a needle movement, a needle moving project of like, we've got to move the needle a little bit on this. We've got to move it here. We've got to move it there. And for that to happen, like, it takes the government playing their role, but it also takes the community playing their role,
Yeah.
and the stakeholders within the city saying we own this problem as well. Again, it's back to this like our story. It's
Right.
if it's our story, it's our problem, and if it's our problem, then we've got to come up with our solution, which really like opens the door for like the only way these things shift, the only way these things move is through collaboration, where everybody gets in, everybody buys in, and everybody realizes they have a role. They're not solely the solution, but they're part of the solution, because it really becomes a community. Community problems can only be solved by communities solving those problems. Because we see someone come in and do something big, but when they leave, what happens then, right? What happens then? And so I think the collaborations have to begin to happen, even when there's differences. We can't see differences as like, well, I don't agree with you on that. We have to see it as you have a difference of opinion. You're seeing something I'm not seeing. This difference isn't like bad. This is actually diversity that's inviting us into collaboration.